Okay, I would like to call this meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Park Commissioners to order, December 16, 2021. Let the record show that all of our commissioners are present for our last meeting of the year 2021. Thank you all for being here. Okay, the next item we have is the Sawyer Point Pickleball concept, and who's going to present that? Jenny Mobley, thank you.
So as you know, at the June board meeting, the concept of pickleball was approved to move forward with staff. And since then, we have been doing meetings every 3 weeks to work with planning, finance, as well as Gary Lessis, who has been a very enthusiastic advocate for pickleball and gathering those groups to do so. So I wanted to bring Gary up to explain to you, since we are having technical difficulties, excuse me, there is a presentation printed out in your packet. Gary is going to briefly remind you what the concept of pickleball at Sawyer Point is, and then I will pick up with the budget and our requests.
Thank you. Morning, Gary.
Good morning, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you for allowing me to present again, and I wanted to thank you for your service here. I've watched a number of the meetings on YouTube, and today we get to talk about something that's a lot of fun. Okay. The first slide to bring you up to speed. If you remember, 6 months ago when we met, we talked about the growth of pickleball and how it's just incredible growth. Well, we just got the numbers for 2020, and the growth from 2019 to 2020 is 21% nationwide. Over the last 6 years, we have 71% more players than we did 6 years ago. So nationally, it's been phenomenal. But if we look at Sawyer Point, the next slide, that growth has been absolutely spectacular. It's hard to see on your black and white. Oh,
we got color.
Okay. The line that looks like a heart monitor is the daily attendance at each of the group play sessions. We have 12 of those group play sessions a week. The red line shows the average over time, and the black line that moves up and down a bit but flat, that shows the court capacity. So if we look at just this year, we had 15,834 players attend 308 group play sessions, averaging 51.4 players per session. If you look at that compared to last year, we had an average growth, we had the growth on average participation of 65%. So 31.1 average number of players per session in 2019, up to 51.4 for, I think I said 2020 to 2021. 31.1 to 51.4. Our Facebook membership grew 157% from 676 to 1,740. And our messaging platform grew 72% from 240 to 413. And what's interesting is that I was chatting with Mr. Nyer about this last week. Just 29 months ago, I had my first meeting with Jenny and Lou at the courts. And the idea was, let's get a few courts down here and have a little bit of fun on these courts that aren't being used at all. So it started from, well, let's just have 4 courts and play a little pickleball, to all of a sudden blossoming into this world-class opportunity that we have today. Next slide. Just wanted to show you our participation. This photo was taken at our social on 8/29, and there were about 175 people there that day. So next slide. We're going to create a world-class facility. We'll have the best courts and the best lights in the Midwest. This will be a destination point for people to come. It's not just a simple paint and patch job. This is going to be a 12-layer cushion surface that people are going to travel to across the Midwest to play on, because it will be less painful for their joints to play on. The same comparable type of courts as the Linder Family Tennis Center in Mason. So this is first class. We will have 12 dedicated pickleball courts and keep 4 tennis courts in place, with 8 overflow pickleball courts layered on top of those 4 tennis courts, for tournaments and overflow purposes. We're renovating the office, the bathrooms, and looking at potentially putting a stadium shade over the seated stadium seats. So this facility will then be able to host clinics, camps, tournaments, yielding economic impact for the city of Cincinnati and the general Cincinnati area and Cincinnati businesses. One of the things that we've noticed is those courts down there were resurfaced 10, 12, maybe 13 years ago, and they were just left to waste. We're not going to allow that to happen. I'm very confident that had those courts been properly maintained over the years, we would have gotten another 5 or 10 years out of that. So to avoid that, we're not going to let that happen. Working with the Cincinnati Parks Foundation, we created an endowment specifically for the maintenance and repair of those courts in the future. We kicked that out 9 days ago. And as of this morning, we have 33 donors who have either donated or pledged $59,000 into this endowment. We're going to raise the $500,000 one way or the other so that we'll be able to protect these courts ad infinitum. We will do that, evidenced by our 2 fundraisers, one that we had last year and one this year. We raised $35,000 from 64 donors that paid for additional nets, an upgraded sound system, and a pickleball practice machine. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Jenny, I just want to ask this gentleman
Oh, sure.
to give the history of pickleball, because it is kind of interesting how it all came to be.
Yes.
Yeah,
A little bit. It was formed in 1965. There are 2 thoughts as to the naming of pickleball. One was that they had a dog named Pickle. This was done in the Northwest,
It was
Seattle.
a man developed it for his
For
children.
his children, right? To entertain the children. And then there are 2 questions. One thought is that they had a dog named Pickles, and the other is that his wife was a rower. And I guess in rowing, you're in the pickle boat in the back of the boat that in the team rowing competition. So those are the 2 names on that. But it was formed in 1965.
And the other thing I think is kind of interesting is, why did he create that scoring? It is so complicated.
Well, it's really complicated. The game of pickleball is super easy to learn. I mean, the scoring is a little complicated at first, but it really takes a lifetime to master. It's fun.
The game or the scoring?
The scoring you can get after the first day.
Okay, all right. Didn't know how complicated it was.
I just thank you for that.
How many have played it?
I've seen it on TV. They even have it on TV now.
Yeah, you know, you've made it to the big time when all of a sudden now there's a contract with ESPN. And if you notice, a few weeks ago, it was on ESPN Plus, and we're not quite ESPN primetime yet, but it's getting there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. So in front of us today, I know you have already approved the concept and we have been working alongside. However, the city administration budget office has placed $250,000 targeted for the Sawyer Point pickleball courts in our fiscal year 22 budget currently. They have also agreed that they are placing an additional $250,000 in the fiscal year 23 budget as a target. However, in order to move forward and try to make sure that we can get our multiple award contracts and RFPs ready to go, we need to make sure we have the full $500,000 in our funds to go ahead and certify money, which we would bring those contracts to you once they are ready to go. But we are looking today, as you see, the estimated budget here right now is at $448,000. That includes resurfacing of the courts, lights, the installation of the lights. We've talked about installing timers so that not all the courts have to be on at the same time. Only the courts that are being played on, the guests can actually turn on those lights themselves. Renovations of the tennis building, like we talked about, additional nets, proper nets for each court, blowers, and a possible shade solution, which does not have a dollar amount to it at this moment. So I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Until
you-
you're done.
I'm sorry, I thought you were gonna ask me a question. So in order to move forward at this time, we are asking to reallocate funds from our current fiscal year 22 budget, 980, the infrastructure and rehabilitation fund, in order to add to the 250 that we have to make a total of $500,000 in order to move forward with the RFP and or multiple award contracts.
My first question to you is,
Yes.
are we going for an RFP or are we going for an RFI to begin with? Because if we don't have an RFI going forward, we're never going to be able to see the contracts that come in. Capiche? And so I'm questioning how we're going about this.
So we were moving forward with a multiple award contract, and I believe Cindy is on the line. She can probably explain it better when it
Cindy's
comes to.
right there.
I'm sorry, Cindy.
Yeah, we would probably move forward using the multiple.
Would you speak up, please?
Yeah, we would probably move forward with the multiple award contract, which is what Jenny just said. So it would be, the work would go out to about 6 different contractors that already have contracts with the city. So there would be a big process with it. It is not an RFP though.
And the timing for that, what does, if we went out with a multiple award contract?
Going through the NACS, we call it.
Yeah.
It would be a couple of months before we got proposals back, probably about 2 months. And then if we had an acceptable bid, by the time we have an executed work order and funds certified, we could probably look at May as a start date, which is fine because I think the first piece of the work that we would be looking at doing is resurfacing those courts. And the installation is based on temperature. So we were already looking at doing the work starting in April or May.
Question, I just want to confirm, will these also be striped for tennis and will this include tennis nets as well?
Yes, it will. So right now there are 8 courts down at Sawyer Point. We would take the first 4 courts and transform them into 12, pickleball courts, 6 on each side. And then the remaining 4 would also transform back into tennis courts with new nets, obviously new surface. This is to resurface the entire and restripe the entire area. We would have then temporary nets to use those 4 tennis courts as pickleball courts as needed in tournaments, amen. So you would have 4 tennis courts, 12 pickleball all the time, and then a possibility of.
Do you have any information on what the level of tennis activity is there now?
It is not very well. We really do not have too many tennis players that come there on a regular basis. I do not have attendance for you. But through the years, there used to be high schools that actually use those courts as their home courts. They since then have found different home courts. So the attendance there has really decreased as far as tennis use.
All that noise from pickleball.
That's right, they're moving them out.
Is it also probable that the state of the courts deterred people from coming to play there?
It is possible. They were renovated, I believe it was in 2010, if my memory serves me correctly. And, but even at that point, we have had different tennis pros that have worked out of the tennis building, trying to really increase attendance. And all my time that I've been involved at Sawyer Point, I probably a handful of times have seen that all the courts have been used for tennis, even on high school tournament days. But they used to run programs out of there and certainly personal lessons. And at most, I would say 2 to 3 courts were the ones that were being utilized.
Lou, did you have?
Yeah, I would like to add just a few comments in terms of the effects with tennis. We took an incremental approach. We just started with a few courts and then we expanded that to kind of test the waters on this. So, again, we feel, that we've thought through this quite a bit. And we do not really anticipate that, but we have preserved, again, what we feel is an appropriate level of, of a tennis option there.
I think that's good.
I, just on the financing, I thought that I had seen emails or something where the city was going to bring forward money into 2022 for the second $250,000. Am I hearing correctly that there was not 250 that the city found to move into 2022?
As far as my understanding, they have placed it on a target for fiscal year 23. However, it is not necessarily in our budget or will come to our budget in 22 unless I am mistaken, but.
Yes, commissioners, what the city has proposed is we utilize our infrastructure rehabilitation dollars in fiscal 22, and they increase our target amount in fiscal 23 by $250,000. So that would mean we would need to push a project from fiscal 22 onto fiscal 2020 infrastructure rehabilitation.
And we have that documented, is my question,
Yes.
because I know that's to be
Yes.
awarded in 2023. Okay, great.
For clarification, we're in fiscal 22 right now.
We're in 22.
Okay.
So what we're hearing here is that the city has asked us to take money that we had allocated in 2022 for other projects and apply it to the 250 that they actually gave us for this project, with the understanding that they will try and get 250,000 approved by city council in June to replace the 250 that's coming out of our budget. That's why I just want to make sure we've got a paper trail.
Yes, we do.
I only had one other question. I read an article about an $8 million pickleball complex coming to Norwood. How does that impact your draw, or how would you say that might impact this project?
It keeps on growing. We're gonna have, there's gonna be 5 indoor courts, 5 outdoor courts, and 1 indoor-outdoor court and a bar at the US Playing Card Factory in Norwood. It's gonna be fantastic. It'll be opening end of next year.
Perfect. Any other questions? So we have before us, go ahead, Brent.
Just on the financing, so we have a paper trail, but we're still exposed for the 250 if the council says we're going to change our mind, but
That's correct.
okay.
And it's only 250.
Yes.
That would
And the
be
first.
what our exposure would be if the city backed out from their commitment.
So we have a recommendation that we allocate, and the action we have to take today is, as we were just saying, we have to reallocate $250,000 from our Fund 980 to apply to this fund, this project, so that we can go out for contract with the understanding that we will seek replacement of that 250. Do I have a motion as to this recommendation?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
This
My
is-
own-
I just have one question.
Yeah.
All right. If indeed the city doesn't give us money, what are we not able to do because we're doing this?
Craig, where is the 250 that we are pulling for this project? What
Supposed to
was
be
it
used.
earmarked for?
Yes, Cindy can answer that, but I also want to indicate that if that does occur, there is opportunity that we can look at Fund 318 or Fund 752.
It's still restricted,
Yeah.
park board money. Yeah, okay.
But
Cindy?
Yeah, for the $250,000 that we're essentially fronting out of our old money, there's a number of projects that we have that we're not going to need the funds for the next 8 months or so until the fiscal year 23 money comes. The $300,000 that we have right now set aside for Owl's Nest Pavilion, if we probably should have done my report first, but that piece of that the funding that we have for that, we could easily defer to until we get that fiscal year 23 funding.
I'm a little concerned about that. I don't like the concept of a project that we want to move forward with and stabilizing that Owl's Nest building, that we just arbitrarily take that earmarked money and move it over to pickleball. I mean, that's a decision I think this board should make.
Well,
Robin Peter to get a call.
the timeline that we have to do anything with Owl's Nest, we need to, or what we are going to be recommending is to use some of that money to engage with a consultant. So that would be a portion of that $300,000, but there would easily be another 250 that we would not be able to utilize until fiscal year 23 money comes in. So I'm not suggesting that we stop anything with Owl's Nest moving forward. We just don't need the whole $300,000 right away.
So,
If I correct, you, your concern is if council does not choose to sort of replenish that 250 that's being brought forward, then do we have a project we're committed to that funding has been redirected because it was pulled forward? Is that?
Correct.
yes,
Make sure
but
you're-
more pointedly
Robbing
is
Peter
the
to pay Paul.
concept, the concept of pushing. I don't want to delay opportunities, and that's where I'm not sure how much we will be approving today for the contract for Owl's Nest. But in concept, I don't like that approach, that we are taking money from a project that is a very high profile project that we are committed to doing, I feel. To just assume that we'll take that money and put it over into a pickleball court. Is there no other funding, $250,000 available that we can use to front this money for
Commissioners.
the pickleball? Exactly.
Certainly, I mean, we have a lot of, the fiscal year 22 capital infrastructure money, none of that has been spent as of yet. A lot of these projects just take time to kind of move through the system, and anything that would require any kind of engineering services, we could probably go ahead and utilize that funding.
So I guess the question is, in the fiscal year 2022 capital authorization that we have, the $2+ million, is there 250,000 of unencumbered or
Yes,
unidentified uses for?
certainly.
Okay,
Yes, in the capital infrastructure budgets, we have money set aside for emergencies or for just unknowns. And certainly there's $250,000
okay,
for that purpose that we could utilize as well.
okay.
If I may, Owl's Nest was an example potentially, but I don't think this is, well, if there's a problem with council with that 250, then Owl's Nest is off the table. That is one of multiple streams of revenue that could cover that if that happens. We're comfortable that won't happen based on commitments and conversations and research with city manager's office, et cetera. But if the elected officials go differently, there are other funds that are available to move that forward. There are also, in addition to expedience, there is also some programmatic advantage to funding the pickleball because of the sequencing part. So you don't want to put down new surfacing and then drive equipment on top of it. So having that sequencing in play is an advantage to that as well. But I think the Owl's Nest was an example, not a definitive, oh, we would absolutely do that. So I think there are a variety of spots that funds could be pulled from to advance that.
The question was different. I heard the question different. Not how can we move the money around to make sure we have the money available? The question in my head was, is there something we will not be able to do in the event council does not approve this $250,000 and we have moved this money forward? Is there something we're not able to do because we've spent $250,000 on pickleball?
If I am, please correct me if I am, but my understanding is that there is not a defined project that will not be able to move forward. If
Okay.
that does not come forward, is that there's not a defined specific project that won't advance if that happens that way.
That's answers my question.
Well, and that's where it's more the concept here that we are looking, this board's looking for transparency, and it particularly as it relates to projects. And that's where I don't want to start the process of reallocating funds without us being aware of what we are doing and agree that that is an appropriate reallocation, even if it's a timing difference. To me, it's a concern that I just want to make sure we place. So that if, in my opinion, if I were making this motion, I would make the motion that we allocate $250,000 of unallocated monies available to front this project. And I guess that was just a motion. We didn't make a motion, did we? Okay,
Did we have a motion on the table?
We did have a motion.
we did have a motion, okay.
But it was different than,
Yeah.
Can we
Different
amend your,
language.
a friendly admission?
no, not with mine.
Was that motion second?
We always
I'm fine
feel
with
a
yours,
levity.
Jim.
Okay, so we have an amended motion on the floor that we approve staff's recommendation to allocate 250,000, additional 250,000 towards a pickleball from unearmarked, unallocated 200 funds in our capital budget.
So moved.
No, that's
No?
already
Okay,
done. Moved in second.
All right, whatever you want.
Any further discussion on this? Get us out of a pickle here, right? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you. And thank you for your energy, and it's exciting. You know, I'm glad we're
Very
putting
exciting.
that park to use and doing something that will bring people into the park. So thank you, Gary.
We're world class.
Exactly.